Hello, thank you for all of the nice words. I gotta say it's gonna be challenging for me because I feel like most of what I wanted to say was already said here, but I'm gonna try. So this is the topic, which is different than on the agenda, but basically it's all about search. Something about me. So I'm a CTO and a co-founder at Lekta.AI. But basically, if you want to know about my background, I used to be a software developer as well as product manager and a designer, so I tend to have a holistic view of things, and this is also the approach that I'm gonna be taking with this presentation. And the Lekta.AI, the company I work with, is a company that is making a technology for building advanced conversational applications. So you can think about chatbots or voice bots or maybe some conversational interface for a mobile application. Like for the biggest bank in Poland, there's also some other brands that you might recognize that are using our technology. So mostly I'm gonna talk about the experiences coming from these projects. Thank you, Michał. That's better. All right. And also, if you have some questions or comments or anything, feel free to interrupt, raise your hand, and we can do it live. I usually think that's better than just waiting to the end. So anyway, the presentation is about conversational search. So kind of similar to what Piotrek was talking about, but I think that in my head the search is a broader term, so it's not only about the situation where you want to buy something or you're looking for some information, you're just putting some words and then getting the results. Sometimes I also think that you can call it a search if you're just entering the website and it's presenting the information that you need, or just taking some guesses or maybe making some recommendations. If we want to make it more advanced technologically, it's about NLP-powered search query interpretation, but maybe more than that. So anyway, why does it even matter? So first of all, I think that in really lots of situations, this is in fact the most natural way for a lot of people to interact with the technology, to do something. Like nobody thinks in terms of SQL queries or some keywords. This is something that people trained to do because this is the technology forced them to use it that way. But I think we can all agree that if we are able to just freely speak to the machine and then get some answers, that would be the best. And what is maybe even more important is that we live in the future, or the future is coming really soon. For a couple of reasons. So first of all, everyone is now talking about the large language models like GPT or BERT or stuff like that, and especially since the Google and Microsoft are really in a hurry to the point that they're making bad decisions and willing to risk their PR just to be the first with the kind of technology powering the search. My opinion is that it's just a matter of time that all of the world will try to adapt and repeat whatever will come up of those projects, and this will be a new standard quite soon. So the better we are prepared, the better for us, I guess. And besides that, there's also another technological breakthrough that is coming, which is the metaverse or virtual reality or artificial reality. All of the major companies are doing something in that space. I have no idea who will win and what will be the leading solution for that, but no matter which of these things will be the most popular, I think that this will also change a bit the way we interact with the technology, because it's quite inconvenient to type or use keyboard when we are wearing some glasses or stuff like that. And again, voice seems to be the most natural solution for that problem. So what are some challenges besides the stuff that Piotrek was already talking about? The things that we are dealing with, first of all, is the incomprehensible speech, which is caused not only by the immature technology like the speech recognition, but also people tend to call our voice bots from the train or the taxi or talking to their children at the same time. So there is a lot of noise, a lot of other people speaking, which is really challenging to differentiate like which words we should take seriously into account and which words should be ignored because it's not part of the thing that people want. Also, my experience is that nobody really has a expectations for the technology that are aligned with what the technology is actually capable of. Like sometimes people have way too big expectations and they can just feel like they can just say anything that it will work because like it's like a virtual person, right? So actually in one of our first voice bots that we deployed, one of the first users that was a power user of the technology was a over 8-year-old guy that just called one of the mobile phone companies and was talking to our robot, and he was saying things like, "Oh, good evening, Mr. Bot. It's the first time I'm talking to a machine, so sorry, but I will try to be nice." So my situation here is, and there was like 5 minutes long story about his life and his issues, and only then he was able to say what he actually wanted. Much more often what happens is that people don't trust the technology and they have tried something already, they don't believe it can work well, so they will just try to speak like a machine themselves, which is kind of absurd because there is a lot of conversations with machines that I heard where the actual person is actually talking like a robot more than the machine that they're having discussion with. Another issue is real world, so it will be best if we were able to just design the whole system from scratch and do it well, but usually what we get is some kind of legacy technology system that's been built for over 20 years sometimes, and then somebody just wants to take a new shiny voice AI or research technology and put it on top of that, and they hope it will work. It can work sometimes, but probably doing some of the things that I'm going to mention and suggest in a while would be very complicated and hard to do it that way. But that's the reality. And also people are difficult. So besides the expectations that I mentioned, sometimes it feels like, especially when it comes to search, people don't really know what they're looking for. They feel like they know, but they're not satisfied with the results. Sometimes they feel like they really know what they want, but they cannot express that. And sometimes I feel like people would even like to say to the bot something like I don't know what it is, but I will know when I see it. So how to solve that problem? And also when reviewing the slides of the presentation before, somebody told me that this might be controversial, so I decided to embrace it and just call it that I'm giving you a bad advice, but I feel it's going to be good advice, but you will see in a moment. So here's a couple of things that I think you could do to make the whole conversational experience better. So first of all, you need to know better, obviously, because like as I said, people are difficult, they won't know what they want, so why even bother listening to them? And also when you need to listen to them and to interpret it in a way, just don't take them seriously, don't take literally what they're saying. And also when giving the results, the truth is not that important. It seems like everyone is agreeing with that, so it's good. Also, one just nice tip for you is try to add some results that make no sense. It really helps. And the last advice would be like, don't hurry. Like we have all the time in the world, like so why wouldn't you want to wait a bit? So seriously, what I mean is like what possibly could I have in mind when I'm saying like you know better and don't listen to your customers. So this is the example from one of our voice bots in Orange, which is the biggest telecom provider in Poland. So this is not how it actually works. This is just example what it could be, and what was the first initial idea to implement. So the use case is really simple. They sell internet connection, and internet connection tend to have some issues sometimes. So people are calling them frustrated to fix the issue. So this is how most of the people would imagine the conversation with the automatic consultant should look like. But in fact, it can be much better. And this is actually something that was an idea coming from one of the directors at Orange, which really inspired me, because like on one of our first meetings, he said that his dream is to have an automated system in the call center that works in a way that when somebody calls them, they don't even need to say anything because they already have all of the data. They know the customers, they know who is calling, they know what services and products they have bought, they have all of the information about their invoices, about what kind of malfunctions are right now happening somewhere in the world. So we managed to develop a solution that works like that. Like if we can identify the customer, of course, if somebody is just calling this info line and saying that internet is not working, it's gonna take 5 to 10 seconds usually, but the system is actually checking all of the possible routes of the problem and giving the answer immediately after that, saying like, well, you haven't paid your invoice, or there is some kind of issue in your area, or maybe you're not really paying for that product, so why do you expect it to be working, and so on. And I guess this is the something that we should strive for. Like, all of the problems related to voice and language and searching are really hard, so it's best if we can avoid that totally and just use some other sources of data and context to make an educated guess. So that example shows how to use some data that is already available, but another example would be to use the context. So this is another application that is powered by our technology. This is a mobile app for the PKO, which is the largest bank in Poland. So you can just use the mobile application on your phone of the bank, and at any moment you can just press the icon on the bottom and just start talking to the virtual assistant. So one of the coolest things about this project is that it's heavily using the context. So whenever you go to, let's say, transaction history for one of your accounts, and then you're asking some question about this account, there's no point in asking like, okay, which account do you have in mind? Like, what do you mean? Because we already can assume that they're talking about the account that they're looking at on the screen. And also, this also shows that it's really nice to combine different modes of communication. Nobody said like that the voice application should be just voice, or just the mobile application should be used by touching and typing. And so this is something that Piotr already mentioned a bit, but I feel like the best solutions are the ones that are combining all of the different ways that we can provide information to the user. Because obviously, like, if somebody wants to have some information, sometimes it's better to just say it. But if we're talking about like a payment code or something like that, it's better to show it on the screen, or even provide a quick way to copy it into the clipboard, because this is the way people use it most often. So about ignoring the people and taking literally, this is another real example. So one of the voice bots that we implemented was for the PKP Intercity, which is the largest train company in Poland. And the most common use case was being able to find some connection. And one of the first bugs that the customer wanted to fill with us, and they say that something is broken, was kind of weird, because that was the situation. Like, some customer called this this assistant. They gave all of the details, like they wanted to travel from some city to some another city, let's say Kraków to Warsaw. Then the bot wanted to ask, like, what time do you want to depart? And the person said 3 p.m. And this is the answer they got, which is true, but they were not satisfied. And maybe somebody has any idea why? I assume you couldn't possibly. So in fact, there was one more connection that was at 2:58, but well, we implemented the search in the most obvious, basic way possible. And later on, after analyzing some conversations, it turned out that it's more common than we thought. For some reason, these trains tend to depart at weird hours like that, but we cannot change that. So we just added a bit of a buffer to that. So whenever somebody is giving a very precise time, we are just adding some kind of margin before that and after that, to include some of the results that might be better for the customer. So the third point was that the truth is not important, and I would suggest you to lie. So this is example taken from YouTube. I'm actually not sure if this is still true, but it used to be true, that the view counters that you can see below all of the videos were faked. In lots of situations, especially after hitting the 300 views mark at the beginning. They were freezing the counter and not showing the results, just to make sure that there is no fake views counted or some other tries to cheat the system. And just simply trying to break some of the bots that people were using to artificially inflate the views and make their videos more popular. And another example is about the weather forecasts. So I'm not sure if you've noticed, but usually in the weather forecast you have this percentage that's telling you like how likely it will rain. And so the question is like, has anybody ever seen 50% chance of rain in any of these weather applications? Because I've never seen that, and from what I learned, this is made on purpose, and these applications are never showing the 50% because they figured out that if we tell people that there is 50% chance of rain, they're gonna think like, okay, so it's either gonna rain or not, so what kind of advice is that? So no point. In this particular situation, they're usually increasing the percentage to reach 55 or 60% because it's better when people take the umbrella and they don't need it than the other way around. But it just shows that sometimes it's not really good to use the actual data and real numbers, especially if it can be confusing or maybe be a bad PR for your application or technology. And also results that make no sense. This is also an actual advice. There is a problem. It's more related to recommendation engines than to search, but in my definition, recommendation is also a search. So the issue sometimes is that it tends to focus on the most popular things and recommend them all the time and avoid things that are not really popular. And I think most of the popular applications right now do it the same way, but the TikTok would be the most famous example. Whenever you try to search for something in TikTok, you will quite often get results that are really something weird and making no sense with only 15 views. So this is the query that I made like 2 hours ago. So on top of the results, I got some video that is like some girl trying to test her name in some search with only 15 views. But the reason they're doing that is to gather more information, because like if you never present that thing to anybody, you will never know if it's actually relevant or if it's popular or if it's valuable. So I think it's very difficult to hit the right balance, not to overdo it, but I feel like it's a really good way to improve the quality of your engine, whatever it's doing underneath. And this is something that is mostly applicable to real conversational applications and voice use cases. But usually when people try to implement some, let's say, voice search application, they think about it in terms of the older technology and the legacy systems. So the assumption is that people will make a query, they will just enter some information, and then we will give them results. And sometimes it's not a good thing. So here's an example, like if somebody is looking for this coffee thing, it could be something more than that, but the speech recognition system might have missed some words or something, so we're not really working with the actual precise query. So one way to present a result would be just to make some educated guess, like probably they mean coffee beans because this is what people usually want to buy when they're asking about coffee. But there's a lot of people that would like to buy a French press machine or maybe some accessories, or maybe, I don't know, something else like a sign for their coffee shop. So when the query is not precise, the other thing we could do would be just to say, okay, I'm not sure I understand that. Please elaborate and give me more details, and I will then give you some results, which is also not perfect for me. Yep, there's a question. 5 minutes. Okay, so it's not a question. That's fine. So actually quite good. So what I would recommend is to leverage the fact that we are having the conversation, and there's no harm in just asking some follow-up questions. So in this example, this is really simple. We can just ask like, which of these things you have in mind? Even if we miss some of the other possible interpretations of that, it's not a problem, because when asked about the follow-up, people will just be more precise and they will say something more. And I feel like it's not a problem that will give them and show them any kind of results, only like some interactions later, because these results will have much better quality. Some more advice. This is the part of the presentation where I couldn't come up with a bad advice style, so this will be more straightforward. So following up the previous, in most extreme examples, sometimes we need to gather a lot of information. So if you imagine some large e-commerce website, most of you should recognize this panel on the left where you can just select 10 different filters and select some categories, input some price target and whatever. So it's much harder to do when you're having a conversation with a system, so basically we need to ask those questions one after another. But the thing that is usually overlooked, but is essential for me to implement a really useful application, is to manipulate the order of the questions in a way that we will really reach the solution in the most efficient way. So if you know this Gaia Akinator, this is a game where you can just think about any person and the computer will try to guess who you're talking about. There's like millions different variations online. You can just type Akinator and you will find it, and it's pretty good. It actually is able to find out what you're talking about. And the way it works is really basic, and you can implement it yourself in your system. Like whenever you have multiple different criteria and you need to somehow narrow down the results, just choose the question that will narrow down the results to have the least amount of results, and then ask the next question and the next question, and in some questions we'll probably arrive at the right answer. So this is something that we actually implemented also with Orange in a chatbot that is helping people to find the right mobile device for them. So the first assumption was that, well, people will just say like, I want to buy a Samsung S22 Plus with 128 gigs of RAM or something like that. People don't do that, especially not people that are willing to talk to a chatbot when buying a phone. So it turned out that those people really have vague expectations and they don't really know what to say to make the search results relevant for them. So we're simply asking those questions based on what we already know. So if we know that this is an iPhone, we still have like 50 different options to choose from, but asking about the screen size will cut probably 1/3 or 2/3 of the results. And at this point, asking for something else would probably be much. It would be worse, like asking for a model where people don't know what kind of model it is, and even if they say like, I want to buy an iPhone 14, it's still like 15 different models with different color options. And it works quite well, so I would encourage you to try implementing something like that. There is a question. Or 5 minutes? It was like 5 minutes ago. So there is an actual question about. That's great.
Do you have a no-win ratio? Because asking a lot of questions, it seemed to be annoying at some point. I think because when you play in Akinator, you're challenging this Akinator because you want him to guess your person that you guess. But in real life, person can be annoyed because I mean a lot of question, seems a lot of time and such things.
Yeah, so it's a good question, but in fact it's not an issue because people that would be annoyed with that, they usually already know what they're looking for, so they will just enter the full name of the phone or whatever in the search, or they will just enter all of the information they want to provide, so we can accept all of the things that will be entered in the text field, so we are only asking the question when it's relevant. So, and for people that have no idea what kind of phone they want to buy and their initial expectation is like, I want to buy a phone for my teenage daughter. I haven't talked to the customers, but they're using that, so I'm assuming that they're actually appreciating that. So I think the last of the points and the advices that I'm gonna give you is that it's usually that the more heuristics you are using, the more magic tricks you want to incorporate in your application, the more important it gets to explain what you're doing to the users, because if you're not doing that, they will create conspiracy theories. Like the best example would be, I guess, Facebook or Google, which are gathering really lots of data about you, and they can very often guess what you're looking for even without you even typing that on your keyboard, but just showing you some relevant ads and so on. And it's so good, it's scary, and leading people to believe that their devices are listening to them, and there's maybe somebody even following you, when it's just simply not true, because the data is enough to make those predictions accurately. But it's much better if you can really explain what you're doing and show something. This is not the best implementation of that, but to be honest, I tried to figure out some better solution. How would Gmail explain how the ordering of the emails work? Some time ago they were just saying like it's sorted by magic, then they removed that. So this is like maybe too difficult, but easier solution would be like this is what Netflix is doing. They are trying to cover all of the bases by showing you different recommendations based on different factors, and they're just splitting that into separate categories, simply saying what it is. Like this part of recommendation is shown to you because you watched some other show, this is something that is trending in your demographics, and this is something that was selected for you, and so on and so on. And I guess that's it. So thank you. If you have some questions, I believe we still have 5 minutes.
Okay, just wanted to ask, in your chatbots or voice bots, do you work more with search technology or more graphs like knowledge graph concepts and similar?
It depends really. Usually when we're just working on the bot application on top of some other system, so it depends on what there is available. I don't think, like, I've consulted for one of the customers how to build a new API for searching to make it easier to work with when building a conversational application, but usually we just need to work with whatever is available. So, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, my question is about how you would recommend a tactic, one or maybe more, of injecting those random results. Like how you would approach that, what you would recommend?
That's a really complicated question, actually. So I'm afraid there is no silver bullet and solution that would work for everything, but if I had to give some guidelines, it shouldn't be random, that random. Usually it's better to just show things that have potential, but you have not enough data to be sure whether that's a good recommendation or not. So usually you get some kind of percentages and something. So if your system that is underneath the voice application is able to provide information like that, that's the best way to do it. Sometimes it's just randomizing, but trying to find different things that are not similar to each other, because there is no value from showing 5 random things that are all the same, because if somebody's interested in one of them, they would probably be interested in 5 of them. So I guess that the idea is to maximize the knowledge that you're getting from showing that thing. Because the idea is, like, most of the people will ignore it. People usually are not that annoyed about those random results if there's not too many of them. But if you hit something that's really relevant for the person and they click on it, you get really good data about that. So I guess that would be an answer. We can have a conversation afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Arek.
Thank you.